Hey everybody, and welcome to another interview video on the channel. Today we have the pleasure of interviewing John Peel, Me and Aceyspud. It was wonderful and we learned an awful lot. Now, I'm putting this beginning to give a little bit of fair warning to people. Firstly, about some bad audio at certain points in the video. I apologize for that. But also when we discuss John Peel's book, Time Worm Genesis, to add some context to one of the characters, Gilgamesh, and about the mythology behind that character, we hear him mention the R word, which I'll put here. You'll know what I mean. And later on in the video, I'm going to be putting a timestamp so people know when to skip past and when it's coming up. I hope this is a sufficient trigger warning for people, and I really hope that you enjoy this wonderful interview. See you all at the end. Bye-bye. Hey everybody, and this is Josh from the Atypical Life YouTube channel. We're here with Aceyspud and John Peel, writer of The Verge New Adventures, The Eighth Doctor Adventures in the 1990s, and many other things. We're here today to talk all about them. So first and foremost, John, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Great stuff. Could you tell us a little bit about firstly, how did you become a writer, and how did you wind up in the Doctor Who universe, if you see what I'm saying?
Well, both of them are actually very related. I started writing when I was about 10 or so, and I knew even at that age that was what I wanted to do, to actually do with my life. The question was how to get anywhere from it. So I did a lot of story writing in various kinds of ways, mostly with a friend of mine called Steve Evans. I would go over to his house every Saturday and we'd spend the evening watching Doctor Who or Lost in Space or Star Trek, whichever was on at the time. And then afterwards we'd go upstairs and sit there and write like crazy. And as a result of this, we ended up writing some Doctor Who short stories because we loved the show so much and we thought we could have fun with it. And we joined an organization called the Doctor Who Appreciation Society in England. And from that, we had gotten their latest fanzine that they were doing, and they had a short story in it that was absolutely dreadful. I mean, really bad. So me being the opinionated so-and-so that I am, I wrote to the editor saying, "Can't you do any better than that?" And he wrote back saying, "Can you?" We took that as a challenge, and both of us we wrote a bunch of we'd already written some, but we wrote a bunch of Doctor Who short stories and we sent them in to him, and he liked them so much he decided to put out a special issue with just our stories. And he decided that what the organization needed was a writers pool where someone could work with other writers to bring their writing levels, writing skills up. And he asked me and my friend Steve to do it. And I mean, we weren't actually looking to do anything like that, but when we were asked, we couldn't really say no. I mean, having already criticized what he had published, we had to show that there was better stuff out there, and there was. I mean, we got some very, very good writers on board for Cosmic Mask, as it became known, and a couple of them have gone on to be professional writers. So it proves that you can get somewhere from fan fiction if you try.
Absolutely, I love that. Go on, son.
Sorry, that's pretty much how I got into writing for writing Doctor Who material.
It sounds like a lot of writers who join Doctor Who go there because they're not satisfied with how it's being run right now. Because that's how Chris Chibnall started. Because there's that infamous clip of him moaning about.
I think it's Child of Time Lord. I think,
yeah. Everyone comes in saying, "I can do better than this."
Yes. Well, that actually, I've done a lot of conventions with other writers, and I mean, I'm talking general science fiction writers, not just Doctor Who writers. And quite a lot of them. I was on a panel with Joan Vinci, and I asked, somebody asked, how did you get started writing? And I told the old story that I always tell, which was I read a book called Interstellar 2:5 by John Rankin. And it was terrible. And I mean, you put it down, and I said, and I thought, I can do better than that. And Joan looked at me and she said, I had the exact same experience with a different book. And then somebody else on the panel said, yes, that's what got me into it. I can do better than that. And I think almost writers in their past somewhere have come across a book which pushed them to say, I can do better than that. And then you feel compelled to do better than that. So it's a part of every writer's growing up, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So anybody watching this and you do want to criticize the show, do better. You can absolutely.
That's how you do it. That's how you do it. That's how I'm thriving at uni right now, because I look at everybody else's work and I say I can do better than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the start of everything, really.
Yeah, 100%. So I think that maybe asking this a bit too early on, but looking through your Wikipedia page and looking through the TARDIS wiki, a lot of your stuff is very linked to Terry Nation and the Dalek work. So you did some target books on Evil of the Daleks, is that right? And a few of the other 60s Dalek stories. Did you have a good relationship with Terry? How did all this come about?
Well, it started when St. Martin's Press asked me about, they were thinking of doing a Doctor Who book, because at that time Doctor Who was really taking off over here in the States. And they thought they would do a Doctor Who book and start cashing in on some of it. And the editor didn't know the show. So he thought, I better contact someone who does. And he called me up and said, can I run these ideas past you? And they were dreadful. I mean, they were really, really bad. So I told him, they're not going to work. They won't work.
Do you remember what some of these specific ideas were?
The only one I can remember was someone had sent in a thing which was titled something like, Why Tom Baker is the Greatest Actor.
Actor, full stop.
Yeah, and then that was like, and I said to the editor, look, if you try publishing that one, you're going to annoy all the fans of every other Doctor.
Yeah.
So he said, yeah, that's a point. It would, yeah. So they were all like that. I can't remember. The others were so bad I can't even remember what they were, but they were not thought out well. So he said, well, do you have any idea of what we could do? And I said, well, Terry Nation wrote this book called The Dalek Handbook, an outer space book or whatever, in the 60s. And I think, with a little updating, that would work. Yeah. So he said, oh, okay, can you talk to Terry for me then and get, see if he's interested? So I had to track Terry down, which I managed. And we had a little chat, and he said, well, I'm busy working at the moment on MacGyver. He was working on at the time. And he said to me, I don't have the time to update something. Would you like to have a go at it? So, I mean, yeah, sure, I'd love to have it. I got the book out. I was looking at it and I realized, no, it really wouldn't update very well. What we needed to do was a brand new book. And that's what we ended up with for St. Martin's, the official Doctor Who and the Daleks book. So that's how we started. And then partway through working on that, Terry called me up and said, would you like to write a novel, John? And I was like, oh, yeah, sure. Why? What? And he said, well, Target's been bugging me again, and they want some Dalek novels. And I said, okay, as long as they let you do them. And of course, Target didn't care who wrote them. For their money's worth, it could have been Trained Monkey. They didn't care as long as it said Dalek on the cover. Yeah. That was what they wanted. So they agreed to let me write the books. And then Terry called me up and said, would you like to do it? Having already arranged for it, you know. Terry was wonderful to work with, absolutely wonderful, because he really didn't have very much of an ego, considering everything that he'd done. And he'd created the Blake Seven, he'd created Survivors, he'd done huge amount of TV work, of course, at that point. And he was very modest about it. And he would just, you know, very depreciating and everything, and very generous. He would say, when I was doing the novels, he would say, well, John, you know, I had my crack at them. It's your turn now on these stories. So what do you think you need to do for the book? And if I had to change something, he would say, no problem, go ahead, do it. And it was a very, very easy working relationship. Plus, he was one of the funniest people I've ever met. I mean, we spent, I would say we spent nearly a third of the time on the phone just laughing.
It's always good.
And that was wonderful. So it was a great relationship. And to be able to, you know, to work on these stories that I had seen as a child was marvelous. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing as far as I was concerned. And Terry was very, backed me up on everything. So it was really good.
Great to hear that.
Yeah, amazing.
I do wonder though, how easy was it to keep up with canon before the internet? Now that you can Google everything, it's easy to do that and see, and that can aid in storytelling. But at the time, I'd imagine you'd have to consult the masters such as Terry and remember.
Terry really didn't remember a lot of it. I mean, he was constantly writing. He was one of those people that hardly ever stopped writing. So, you know, he moved from one project to another, and the one that he'd finished was in the past, put behind him, and onto whatever he was doing now. As a result of which, he didn't actually remember very much. When I was doing the chapter on the history of the Daleks for the book, good luck with that. I never had one myself. He'd never written a history of the Daleks. He had no plan. He just wrote each story as he was asked to write a story. So there was no planning involved in any Dalek history or anything. And as a result of which, he was ready to bet me before I began doing the history of the Daleks that I couldn't do it. And he was quite amazed when I actually managed to put a coherent timeline together. He said he'd never thought of half of the stuff. So that was the way Terry was. You know, a lot of it.
It's a good thing it involves time travel, because that can really help with putting canon together. I suppose. Things can change. And Terry was very fond of that sort of idea.
Oh yeah. On that note, one of the most infamous parts of one of the Eighth Doctor events you did was War of the Daleks. And there's an awful lot of changing around of what people perceive to be the established Dalek law at that time. How did you go about making this plan? I'm guessing you planned it out beforehand, say this is how it actually happened. How did you go about that? What made you decide upon certain decisions in that, from Dalek Invasion of Earth to Destiny, Remembrance of the Daleks? Sorry.
Well, what happened was, Remembrance of the Daleks was broadcast, and Terry called me up, and it's one of the very few times where he had lost his temper. Normally, he was the easiest going person in the world, but when he saw Remembrance, he called me up and he said, I never approved them blowing up Scaros. This wasn't in the original outline or anything. And, you know, he was furious, absolutely furious. And he said, you know, that man, John Mason Turner, that man will never have the Daleks again. He was so annoyed. I mean, he really felt like he'd been betrayed. I don't know. I talked to Ben Aronovich, and Ben assured me that the outline that he wrote had included the destruction of Skaro, and I believe them.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether it's just that Terry skimmed over the outline and didn't see that part, or whether JNT was pulling a fast one. I mean, we'll probably never know. But I know Terry was absolutely livid. When it came time to do War of the Daleks, I ran the idea past Terry, and Terry said, "No problems, but if you could do me a favor, bring Skaro back." And he said, "No pressure. If you can't figure out a way to do it, we don't worry." I said, "No problem. I can bring him. I can bring Skaro back. Don't worry. By the way, can I kill off Davros?" And Terry thought for a moment. He said, "You can do anything you want, John. Just don't kill him too permanently."
Yeah.
He said, "I learned from my mistake in that first Dalek story. You don't kill off a good villain forever."
Yeah.
So that was basically his suggestion for War of the Daleks, and I had no problems at all with doing this.
Yes.
Meant jiggling the continuity around a little bit, but as a writer, part of the fun of being a writer is being given constraints and then seeing how you can work around them.
I can
so much Doctor Who has to thank for that, because with TARDIS they were constrained by budget, obviously, so it had to be a police box. And it's a wonder when you're able to adapt something that already exists and is beloved. It's a wonder what you're able to change, and it might surprise you how it's handled. Sometimes I wonder what Terry might think of the Paradigm Daleks, for instance. Would he have approved of the Hunchback or the colours and stuff?
I don't think Terry would have liked them. One of the reasons why he wanted me to do the Dalek novels was because he and I had the same attitude towards the Daleks, and I was following what he wanted. Because it was the way I also saw it, so we had no problems there. Whereas I think he would have probably taken exception to a few of the things that have happened to the Daleks since, because they are not. He didn't like a lot of what JNT was doing with the Daleks, basically turning them into tanks.
Yeah,
that was. They weren't doing anything; they were just tanks running around shooting. Whereas, of course, he always thought the Daleks were far more subtle than that. Not that they wouldn't go running around shooting people, but there would be more of a motivation behind it. It wasn't just the randomized extermination.
Yeah, absolutely. They're more strategists in Terry Nation stories. They actually have a plan and they are able to do it on their own,
And for me, that was why I wanted to get rid of Davros, because I was getting really fed up with the JNT era. Davros comes in, has his Daleks, the Imperial Daleks come in, they have a big fight, and then whatever. Because they kept repeating that. And I was fed up with it, and I thought, if we get rid of Davros, at least semi-permanently, then we can get on to telling stories again instead of just having this endless battle.
Yeah.
So that was the concept behind War of the Daleks, was to finish that storyline off completely and get on to something else.
And they can have some of their menace back if they're united against everything else as well.
Absolutely.
If they're fighting each other, it can lead to a lot of funny moments. We were laughing at some of those stories. They just shoot each other.
Yeah, there's literally one that basically is like, "Run, help me!" Yeah. Oh. But just to very quickly ask, because I have no confirmation on this whatsoever, but was War of the Daleks ever pitched as a TV episode? There was.
Not exactly. What happened was, I thought, having done the novelization, it would be fun to try pitching a TV story. Directed to the BBC. And I wrote War of the Daleks originally as a 4-part idea.
Yeah.
If you read War of the Daleks, you can see the 3 points where it was meant to break for the viewers.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I had just finished writing the idea up, and I was going to run it past Terry. And that's when Terry saw Remembrance and said, that man will never have the Daleks again. So I thought, oh, well, and filed it away. But then when BBC Books came to me and asked me if I'd like to write another Doctor Who story with the Daleks in, I thought, okay, perfect opportunity, and pulled it out again. So originally, yes, it was going to be a TV outline that I was going to submit, but it never got anywhere at that stage. But I just picked it up and carried on.
Well, that's fantastic. Go on, Tom.
You learn not to dispose of any ideas if they're workable.
Yeah.
So just put them on the back burner for a while, and that's what happened here.
Absolutely. I only say because if you look up online, there's like a list of what people say are unmade episodes, and it says that War of the Daleks was pitched. So I thought I'd ask really quickly about that.
Yeah. It almost got pitched.
And then, go on, Asa.
Oh, I was just going to ask, do you take full advantage of when you write in book or comic form? Because you don't have to worry about TV budget then, so you can have great big monsters and stuff. Speaking of, go on.
I'm sorry, I'm a little deaf. I missed that bit.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I don't know how loud I am on my mic. I was going to ask, do you take full advantage of the book and comic book form in terms of what you're able to get away with? Because with TV, there's a lot you might have to cut out because of budget or impracticality. But books, you can go crazy.
It's wonderful having the freedom of a book where there's no budget constraints. I mean, if I can imagine something, it goes in the story. I don't have to worry about it. When I was writing the novels from the chase, this is what I found with Terry. Terry had written his original script, and they had been very severely rewritten by Dennis Spooner, because Terry's original ideas would have broken the bank. I mean, BBC couldn't have afforded to film them. So Dennis had rewritten them on a level where they could actually spend the right kind of money. So when I was novelizing the chase, I put all those bits back in again that couldn't be filmed, and it made a much more interesting story. I think much more fun for the readers. And when I was doing War of the Daleks, my immediate thought was, let's do things that you could never do on the TV. And that's why I have this whole opening sequence of the Thal Dalek War and blowing a planet out of the sky. I mean, it would have blown the budget for Doctor Who for an entire year to put that in. But I mean, I could do it. And Terry loved it. It was one of Terry's favorite bits, the idea that the Thals are on their way to becoming the Daleks. They're becoming what they hate. And Terry liked that concept. So really fun.
Sounds fun.
Yeah,
sometimes on Doctor Who, a story might be hampered by a bit of soapy drama that it's got to be there because we've got to save a bit of money. There's some Dalek stories where it's like, okay, human scene, we just got to skip past this. Yeah, I'm going to feel sorry for you when you're dead. Absolutely. I'm not going to cheer. Go on, Flem.
I was going to say, I feel like the Thals are quite interesting characters in themselves, and the fact we haven't seen them in quite a while, be it on TV or in books. I don't think they've even been used in books in about 10, 15 years, so I'd be very interested to see them in the show again,
Yeah, I mean, as far as I was concerned, the Thals were an essential part of Dalek history. So bringing them back made perfect sense to me. Especially after the only other appearances in Planet of the Daleks. Well, Genesis as well, but that's back on Skaro. But in Planet of the Daleks, we have them, and they're hunting the Daleks. And I thought, well, why wouldn't they carry on? They're like, in many ways, they were kind of similar to the Jewish Secret Service hunting down Nazis. Except that the Nazis were hiding and the Daleks didn't bother to hide. I mean, but the whole concept was, you're going after your enemy. And I liked that whole thing, which is why I kept, putting it in.
Yeah, I think they're absolutely important to the mythos. When I was a kid and I had New Who only and didn't know much about the classic series, I would remember in annuals where they'd explain the Dalek origin. I just remember, what are the Thals? How come they're not in the show? What? It turns out there's all sorts.
Yeah, absolutely. This is only a hypothetical question, considering you knew Terry quite well. Do you think he would have liked the idea of the Time War? Just something off the top of my head. Do you think he'd like that idea of the Daleks and Time Lords going at it in a war?
Oh, I think he would have thought it was perfectly inevitable, because the two of them would be on a collision course. Unfortunately, that was bound to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he would have loved it considerably. I was actually going to one of the ideas that I was considering after Legacy of the Daleks was to do a story where basically the Dalek invasion of time, where the Daleks go after by accident the existence of the Time Lords, and they have a plot underway, which the Doctor emerges in the middle of, where they're going to invade Gallifrey. And I came up with a clever way they could do it, I thought. But by the time I'd worked it out and had it all ready, I got sidetracked doing other projects, so I didn't come back to it in time to actually do anything with it. But I was originally going to do that. It just sounded like some of these things are almost in an inevitable outgrowth. There are certain things you come up with. You say, "Oh, I have to do this. This is too much." I mean, it's like when I did one of my Star Trek novels. My immediate thought was, okay, what are we going to do? What's something that's going to be terribly inevitable? And I thought, the Borg find Deep Space Nine. I mean, I thought that was a dead certainty. So unfortunately, so did my editor when I sent the idea in. He said, no, Paramount will never okay this. They'll want.
Yeah.
So, you have to hit the right moment, otherwise you're not going to get approval.
So about the Time War is that it's such a big confrontation idea. It's the ultimate war idea that it would be weird to portray it. Like, how could you do it justice? So I liked how they handled it, where they would only speak of it, and it's like, we must never speak of it. It was a horrible thing. I want to forget it.
Yeah,
you'd see traumatized characters from it, and it's all in your mind what happened. So when they started in the 50th, just opening up to portraying it, and it kind of ruined it for me. I wanted to imagine it was horrifying, and
you could never get away with that on kids' TV though, and that's why, as you say, you should probably have never shown it. Maybe do audios about it, maybe do novels about it, but.
Because when the Master came back, Start Raving Mad, that was an example to me of how horrifying it was. So, that's tell, don't show right there.
Yeah, that it was so bad it even drove the Master crazy. Yeah, that was a good idea, but there we go.
Oh, absolutely.
I guess you inevitably have to keep going and open things up. Because the fans are going to be wanting that kind of material. Part of the fun of meeting this kind of thing is being able to come up with things that you think will please the fans. Which is part of the fun of it. What would the fans like to see? And that was part of how I wrote my books originally. Was to appeal to the fan reader.
If you ask me, when it comes to the Daleks, the fans are not asking for that much.
No, I don't think so.
It's not that hard to make them really awesome.
No,
they just want to have a good, basically, war story. Because that's how the Daleks are. They fight constantly. So the fans want a good story. that you can get your teeth into really and enjoy tremendously. And the Daleks really do meet a great deal of expectations for the fans, I think, more than most other villains. The Cybermen secondarily, I think, but the Daleks are really it when it comes to the villain.
Exactly.
There's as much potential with them as there is just stories of war itself, basically.
Yeah.
Because there's nobody that won't fight.
Yeah.
And it's fairly easy to come up with a Dalek idea. All you have to do is come up with some nasty mechanism that they've evolved for some reason or other, and then just throw them in. And they basically write themselves at times.
No, exactly. There's, as long as you have good set pieces with them, as we've said, we like having them be intelligent, but there are good stories where they're not really. I mean, like Parting of the Ways, in my opinion, is one of the better modern Dalek stories, and a lot of that is just them chasing people, you know?
Well, I think the real thing you have to do with the Daleks is make them scary.
Yes.
Make them very... for example, when Rob Shearman wrote Dalek for the Ninth Doctor, I mean, I loved the story because it was, for the first time in a long time, the Dalek was scary.
Yeah.
One Dalek versus everybody, and you could not guarantee you were going to win because the Dalek could take everybody out. And that was exactly right. I think Terry would have loved that story because it really showed what the Daleks could do.
It seemed so designed to confront everything that you would laugh at. It's like, oh, they keep saying exterminate, they don't shoot. It keeps shooting first. Oh, the plunger, it tears someone's face off.
Yeah.
It crushes their face.
Yeah.
Oh, the stairs, they can't get up the stairs, flies up the stairs. It was a conga line of failure for the humans. And as a kid, yes, it terrified me. I was up at night. I needed my bed away from the window because I was scared of it rising up from the window. And my dad just looked at me and thought, they got the Daleks right. Because look at my son, he's a wreck. Well done. Well done.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's one of my favorite Dalek stories, that.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't watch the finale. I couldn't watch Parting of the Ways. I couldn't watch it because they were back and there was too many of them.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the perfect build-up as well. So you see what one can do, what can an army do type thing. So having them next to each other was fantastic. So,
I say, that's brilliantly done. It was really lovely.
So after War of the Daleks, not too long later, you wrote, let's see if it shows up here, Legacy of the Daleks.
Yes.
Disappearing into the background, but Legacy of the Daleks. Now,
well, yeah, they actually asked me to do a second Dalek book before I'd even finished the first one.
Really?
I think, yes, I think they realized, as before, that putting Dalek on any cover is going to make it sell more. So they asked for a second one. And again, as I said earlier, you know, as a writer, if you get a good idea, never just forget about it. And I had originally come up with the idea for Legacy of the Daleks as a short story back in my my fan writing days. I'd written this short story with Susan on the future Earth meeting the Roger Delgado master. And I hadn't really gotten very far. It was just a short story, but when I was trying to think of another idea for the Daleks for a novel, I thought, you know, that wasn't a bad idea. And it kind of set up a situation that I could make more use of. I could do more with the background. The idea of what would happen after the Dalek invasion has been defeated. How would people cope?
Yeah.
What would become of it? I mean, they wouldn't go straight back to exactly as it was before because they couldn't. There were too many dead. Civilization is on the verge of collapse. So I had all of this going on in the background. So I came, you know, from that original short story, I started developing the background for a longer story. And I like the idea also that the Eighth Doctor would suddenly try and make good on the promise that the First Doctor had done by saying to Susan he would come back and see her again.
Absolutely.
And he's finally got around to it,
Yes, no, absolutely. I was going to say they've just tackled Biss and Big Finish, of course. They've done that a couple of times now. So I think logically, for whatever reason, 8 just kind of fits that idea. I don't know what it is about it, but the Eighth Doctor seems to be the ideal fit to see Susan again.
Yeah. And
you get something of a restart sense with 8th, because he's in the middle of 2 completely different generations.
Yeah.
He's got a sense of rebirth about him.
Plus, Susan was always one of my favorite companions, and
yeah.
I just like the idea of just bringing her back. And it was interesting. When I finished the book, I wrote a little afterward saying, that this was actually based on the short story I'd written for a fanzine. And my editor called me up and he said, "Oh God, John, I'm not printing that." He says, "I'm sorry, but if I put in there that this was originally a fan short story, I am going to be inundated with fanzines from now on. People would try and sell me that story." So it never made it to the book.
But
it's called.
I can see his point of view, let's face it.
Absolutely. Very quickly, is there any protocol to using someone like Susan? Because it seems that the show's been very guarded against revisiting Susan in general. Did you have any pushback from the publishers, anything like that?
Well, it would have been difficult for them to reuse Susan very much on the TV, because obviously, although Susan wouldn't have aged, the poor actress Caroline Ford certainly has. Still looks very good, mind you, but she does not look a lot like the old Susan, so it would have been difficult. And you could have had her regenerate, I suppose, but sometimes it doesn't. It's like with Liz Sladen playing Sarah Jane. They could bring the character back, but you couldn't imagine anybody else doing it like that.
Absolutely.
So I think they were wise not to bring Susan back on the TV.
The only way I'd do it personally is say you see an older Susan at first, and then you have her regenerate. You need that visual carry on, I think. Because
it's just it makes the Doctor look a bit mean. That's the consequence of it.
It's better for the fans to think, well, maybe he went and visited her again, but we didn't see the adventure because it was just a big hug fest and nothing really happened. I think they'd prefer that to having it done badly.
Absolutely.
Just a nice cup of tea together, no Daleks.
Yes, exactly. Which would be nice for the characters, but terrible for viewing.
So I know that you said you had an idea for a third Dalek book, but I
always have ideas.
Absolutely, which is always good. How do I say it? Because these were the only Dalek books produced by BBC or even indeed Virgin. Was there any other requests to have any done that you know of where you sought out to do more at all?
No, I don't think so. After Terry's passing, there was less resistance to using other writers.
Right.
While Terry was alive, he didn't want anybody else to play with the Daleks except for me, which was very flattering. It was lovely that he felt so much. But after he passed, it was opened up to other writers, and some of them have been very good. I read, I don't know if you've read it, George Mann's Engines of War.
Yes,
War Doctor adventure, and I thought he did the Daleks extremely well. So the Daleks are still around, as we know, and they're going to continue, I'm certain.
Oh, absolutely.
I'd love to have another go at them, I must admit.
I do hope that happens because again, I was
good to
telling
hear.
off.
I tell you what.
Oh, go on.
What other monsters would you love to write for?
Good question.
Speaking as just big fans.
Yeah, I've wished I could write some stories featuring, say, the demons.
Ooh.
I love the demons. When that was a good one. And also, I've had fun writing some of the lesser monsters. I mean, the very first piece of professional Doctor Who I wrote was the backup strip for 4 issues of Doctor Who Weekly, as it was then.
Yeah.
I brought the Sea Devils, the Celestial Toymaker. I mean, I love.
Oh yeah,
yes.
I love a reality bender.
Yeah, and I mean those kind of characters, yes. And I found also that I kind of like creating my own monsters, my own creatures. Part of the fun of it. When I was asked to do one of the Lerhbridge Stewart novels, I wanted to do, because I'd never written Lerhbridge Stewart in my my BBC books or anything. So I thought it would be lovely to write him, and I came up with a monster called the Emir, or the Grandfathers, and that was fun because I was trying to create something that hadn't been done before. Well, probably somebody somewhere has done something like it because it's almost impossible to be completely original. But I wanted to do something a little different, and that was a huge amount of fun. And playing still in the Doctor Who universe, but without Daleks.
Yeah. It's good that you have that much freedom with this franchise, and how anything can go. And I love it when an obscure monster comes back. So when the Zygons came back in the new series, and they did a pretty good story of them, and now it's like, oh, you couldn't do anything with them again, could you? No, never say that. Never say that. I think a lot of them have a lot of potential. It's good to have a gallery and build up a mythos like that.
Yeah. You can do anything as long as you're creative, I believe.
Absolutely.
You can have a lot of fun. I mean, there are a lot of obscure monsters from the past of Doctor Who that would stand a good resurrection. And they're out there somewhere. Why not?
Like the Candyman.
The Candyman.
Ah, well, yeah. Not so sure about the Candyman, but I remember thinking I would love to have done something with the Draven.
I was about to say the Dravens, the Drashings, yeah.
Because nothing was really made of them, and I think in a more modern age, the idea of a female-run society which uses men only for reproduction and then throws them aside, that's a perfect analogy for these days. We could have a great fun story of reversing PC and everything like this, just fun.
Yeah, I think that'll be good.
It could be, think so. If I ever come up with a great idea, I'll have to figure out who I could pitch it to.
It's good that fun is one of the primary focuses, and is that important?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah. You can finally ask your question, Flem. I do apologize.
Oh no, absolutely. It's fine. I was going to ask about the other book that you did in the Doctor Who main range back when it was the Virgin New Adventures. You actually did the first ever Virgin New Adventures book in. Can you help me with the pronunciation here? Time Wirren, is it? Time Wirren Genesis.
Yeah. I pushed very hard for that. I really wanted to be the first person to write a new authorized, the first authorized Doctor Who adventure. And I pushed very hard with my editor to do that. And it was kind of funny because I met Terence Dix a little while later, and I said to Terence, did you really should have been the one to write the first one because you were so associated with the show. I said, were you a little upset when I got in there first? And he laughed and he said, not in the slightest, because I knew the first one would get all the flack, and then I could write my piece.
Wow.
That was quite. We had a good laugh about that one, but he was right. I mean, I got all the flack, and so I could see the wisdom in what he thought. That's what you get for being a more mature writer.
Yeah. I guess.
Hey, do you have to describe your new monster to the illustrator of the cover?
Oh, yes. What happened was Peter Darvill Evans, who was the editor at the time, had come up with the initial concept of the time worm, but only as far as the very, very vaguest outline, not much description at all. And he left it to me to fill in the details, which would have to go to the others. What we were doing was we were writing the first 4 books all simultaneously. So I was writing the first, Terence was writing the second, Nigel was writing the third, and Paul was writing the fourth, all at the same time. So I had to write a sample chapter and a description and everything, a background for everything, which was then sent to the other 3 writers so that they could work from it too. So I wrote this introductory paragraph of, excuse me, of what the time worm was. And I explained that she was a cybernetic creature who had been human, but originally human, but had become more. And then this was sent off to Andrew, I believe it was Andrew. That was an Andrew. Yeah, that was an Andrew Skeletor cover. Andrew, who worked from my quite vague description. Originally, I was thinking of making her kind of like a spider creature, but then I thought, well, that's kind of dull. We've had spiders in before, so let's do something a little different. So I described her as a sort of this cybernetic siren kind of character.
Kind of reminds me of the xenomorph with the shape of her head from the Alien series.
Yeah, I don't know whether Andrew was influenced by that, but then, I mean, the first I knew was they sent me a proof of the cover, and I was like, oh yeah, that's definitely not quite the way I was thinking of her, but definitely right.
Yeah, it probably never is quite the way you think of it, but it's good in its own right. Go on.
Exactly. Well, in fact, when I was doing the comic strips, that one of the huge parts of the fun of writing the comic strips is I would describe what I wanted on the page, but I had an image in my own mind, of course, what it would be. And the comic artist would actually read what I'd written and interpret it. So in no cases really were the strips the way I'd originally envisioned them, but they were all better, thank goodness. They were better than I imagined, and I was very pleased with them. So in the time worm cover, when I got the picture of the time worm, I was like, not quite the way I pictured it, but yes, I like it.
A eureka moment. Yeah.
Good.
I guess another question leading on about the Virgin New Adventures. We know that very much so that the people behind them wanted to make a more mature Doctor Who. They actually really planned this out. Supposedly they had like a series Bible and this sort of thing. Were all the writers clued in on this, or were you given quite a lot of freedom on what you could do, if you see what I'm saying?
Well, I didn't have the problem because I was basically the one that was being experimented on. They didn't have a writer's Bible so much at the time. I'm trying to remember what I was sent. A little bit of background, just a little. And then what I tried to do was to work from that. And I would have all these, I wrote up a list of questions for the book, and I had had Peter ask the production team about the answers, because I mean, I really didn't know a lot of background material on the Sylvester shows. I'd only seen about half of them by that point, because being in America, they didn't come here quite so easily. And I had only caught some of them. And as a result of which, I had sent a whole bunch of questions into the BBC about the backgrounds for the characters, which I got no replies. So
Really?
Really, no. I wrote, for example, are Ace's parents still alive? Because in the show, you don't know. They don't say that there are any. There's the implication that the mother is still alive, certainly, but there's no mention of the father in any episode at all. So, I mean, I was asking, is he still there? Are Ace's parents still, together? And got no replies on any of these, because not because they were being nasty, but because I don't think they did. The questions had arisen in their own minds.
Yeah.
They hadn't thought about these things. When I'm writing, I like to think about my characters, what's going to be motivating them and everything. So I like to know, are their parents alive? Do they have siblings? What jobs have they done? This kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I like to know that, and unfortunately, I got none of that really back for Ace. So as a result of which, I used my imagination and just threw a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah.
It would have been nice to have.
I think family is important for a companion. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, Ace was the very beginning of all of that. Like, Ace is easily the most close to a modern companion in the show.
Yeah.
And one of the good things about those Virgin Adventures is they really expanded upon her and gave her a lot more character.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I started doing that. You see, when I came up with the actual storyline for Gilgamesh, it wasn't my idea to use Gilgamesh. What happened was I came up with a completely different, totally different outline for the first book. And Peter then said to me, yes, I forgot to mention, I want Mesopotamians in it. So then I had to go back and read
just this little thing, yeah.
just a small, And he said to me, do you know who Gilgamesh is? Well, he was asking the right person, because I literally went like, okay, here's my copy of the Epic of Gilgamesh, and it was right next to my computer. So I knew what he was talking about. We had all that discussion about putting him in, and I said, well, Gilgamesh is a hero in the story, but he is not what we would consider to be a hero, because he's got a lot of bad traits.
Yeah.
He's violent, he's unpleasant, he's egotistical, but he's the hero. This is the good guy. So and I said, and also he was very unpopular with his people, because he was constantly raping other men's wives. And I said, if we have him in the book, I can't really leave out all of these aspects of the character. How far can I go? And Peter said, well, no gratuitous sex unless you think it's called for. So that was my guideline. But I was doing a balancing act between what I thought I had to have and what I thought I could get away with, really.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, because later on these would be branded as very violent, very sexually driven, and a lot of drug use, actually. I know Russell T Davies did one quite late on in the run. And the literal... Yeah, go on.
Yeah, Peter's original outline to me was to say, we want these books to be adult books, because children are not going to be reading them. For one thing, they're going to be not over 300 pages. Kids don't read that amount. This was way before Harry Potter, of course. Children's books were usually around 120, 160 pages.
Yeah.
And these were originally planned to be at least twice that. which was fine because you got more room to work in a story. And he wanted them to appeal to science fiction fans rather than just specifically Doctor Who fans, which is why the opening chapters of Time Worm, I was asked to reintroduce the Doctor. And I thought the best way to do that was to have this sequence where his memories have gone and he's having to reintroduce them. That would bring it, it was a way of bringing in the past without going, and this happened and that happened. And I wanted to do something a little bit more lively than that.
Oh, yeah.
I think one of the
I thought, having Ace completely have a memory wiped would be a good place to begin it and to build on. But they were definitely intended from the very start to be far more adult reading, and that was part of the brief we were given when we were doing the stories, was they have to be more adult.
Great.
Speaking of which, you've actually you've written a novel for a younger demographic with the Lucy Wilson mysteries,
right?
With the book called The Midnight People. So how was that different?
Oh, that was a huge amount of fun. In fact, right at this moment, I started writing today my second Lucy Wilson. So the what happened was, again, in this case, the publisher and editor contacted me and said, "Would you like to play in this universe?" And as I said, I couldn't resist doing the brig. And they said, "Well, we've got this new character also that we're bringing in, Lucy Wilson. Would you like to write something for her?" And I thought, yeah, why not? That should be fun. And with the Midnight People, it was basically science fiction written for a slightly younger audience. I've done a lot of horror books for the younger audience, and I've done some fantasy books, but I'd never tried anything quite like that. So it was great doing the Lucy book, because it was, I guess it's kind of like the Sarah Jane Adventures kind of thing. The adventure taken down a level rather than pumped up a level, which was, it worked well for me, and I like the characters. Lucy and Hobo are quite entertaining. And that to me is the important thing as a writer, is that you should, I get up in the morning and there's nobody watching me to make sure I actually sit down and do any work. I mean, as far as anybody knows, I'm not doing anything. And to get to work, I have to motivate myself. And the only way I can motivate myself is if I get up each morning going, "Oh, another chapter, I can't wait." So I always do projects that to me sound like they're going to be huge fun, because that's the way I can, self-motivate, ensuring that I actually do the work rather than just spend the whole day doing nothing but watch TV or whatever. That's the way I take on projects. If they sound like they're going to be fun, yes, let's go. And I end up doing. That was going back to Terry, actually. When I was talking to Terry when we started working together, he would give me every now and again, he would give me pieces of advice. And one of the pieces of advice he gave me was, if somebody ever asks you, "Can you write whatever?" always say yes. He says, just say yes. Make it, be confident. Yes. He says, then you go away and panic. And then he says, but the most important thing is, after you've panicked a bit, sit down and do it.
Yeah, because you've made it necessary for yourself.
Yes, you pushed yourself into a corner. You have to do what you committed to. And I love that piece of advice. And as a result of which, I've done some very strange things over my career. Probably the strangest was writing a calendar. I wrote a calendar one time, which was bizarre. and I've only written one calendar, so it tells you how much I like doing it. But it was an experience. It was something I hadn't done before. And even now I'm finding that I can get involved in projects which I've never written quite like that before. And it makes things lively. It makes it, entertaining. I've been writing for now 40 years. Good grief, 40 years. Yeah. So it's nice when you can get a chance to do something that you haven't done before. And in the case of Lucy Wilson, it was something I hadn't done before, and it sounded intriguing. So I thought, yeah, good to go. And as I say, now I'm writing my second because I had so much fun with the first one.
Good to hear.
Oh yeah.
So you've come into it as a seasoned veteran.
Wow.
After 40 years, I better be coming to something.
No, that is great to hear. My background is I'm doing script writing at uni right now, so just hearing that idea of try anything, I really like that idea personally. Yeah.
I already know that characters that you enjoy writing for is one of the best things to have, because the scripts, you will want to return to it. It won't be that hard starting again. And it won't be that hard for you to come up with it. You've got like an internal consistency and logic in your head because you know exactly who they are.
Yes.
So having a companion that you'd love for Doctor Who, that you like writing for, does so much for you. It's a good idea. So a lot of my stories for uni, they've been character based. There basically isn't a plot until the end or themes.
Yeah.
But I've wrote people that I would love to voice over and stuff.
Yeah. And when I did the missing adventure that I wrote, Evolution, it was so much fun for me because they said, well, what Doctor companion team would you like to do? And I was pretty sure that that Peter was going to expect me to say the first Doctor and Susan. But I actually went with the fourth Doctor and Sarah, because they were my favorite combination. And I just loved doing that, getting into Sarah's voice and writing her, because I just adored her as a character. And it led to one of my favorite things. In fact, I did a convention with which Liz Sladen was also at.
Yeah.
And this was while I was actually writing the book. And I went to her and said, Liz, I'm doing a novel with Sarah Jane. And Sarah Jane meets her own idol. And she said, she leaned forward and took my shoulders and she said, who is it? And I said, it's Rudyard Kipling. And she said, oh, thank God you picked somebody intelligent. And then she gave me the biggest hug.
No.
And then she was still very protective of her Sarah character. And it was just so lovely. I mean, she was such a sweetheart. It was definitely a highlight of my convention going, getting a big hug from Liz Sladen.
Oh, sounds it.
Yeah. Lovely, because that was one of the first companions.
We grew up with her, didn't we? We grew up with her with the Sarah Jane Adventures.
That's what's so good about her. Like the basis of her companion. You could say most companions who are good these days, or any era in the show's history, have taken something from Sarah Jane's particular skill sets, attributes, etc.
Like that's the bar to compare the rest to.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yes.
But yes, that's all the questions I've got. But before I go, I'd just very quickly like to say thank you for contributing to Doctor Who, and specifically to my earliest memories of reading, actually. Because when I was very young, my aunts were like very big on what came out in the 90s for Doctor Who, and they gave me two books. They gave me The Eight Doctors by Terence Dicks, and they gave me War of the Daleks, and I instantly went for it because Daleks on the cover. And it's one of my earliest memories is just having reading about the sequence you mentioned at the beginning about the files. Yeah. So
But that's how you were introduced to the Daleks, not being terrified like I was.
Oh no,
on TV.
I had that first. I watched Resurrection of the Daleks. That was my first thing, and then I saw this. My Daleks, give me them.
I would have seen it and gone, Daleks, no, put it away.
Oh.
That was my childhood too, the Daleks. So I couldn't resist. It was just so much fun to do these.
Absolutely. So
some people talk about the Daleks getting old. I don't think they will.
No,
not really. We kind of still, everyone still likes them.
They're much too popular.
That's it. That's why you see them almost every year. Like, there's always rumors. Yeah, but it's like there's a rumor that it's because Terry Nation's state might take them back. But I personally think it's because without them, you can't really pop a rating, if that makes sense. You can't.
The reason I come back. I'm a great fan of Chibnall, I've got to say. But people admit that he does the Daleks quite well because they're menaces.
Yeah.
I'll admit it. Okay, go on then.
Say it.
Hey, you get weaknesses and you get strengths with your writing. And with him, I think Daleks are all right. So thank you very, very much.
Yeah, you're quite welcome, man. Had a lot of fun.
Oh, great stuff. Have a lovely day, and we'll see you all very soon. Bye bye.
Okay, thank you so much.
Have a good evening.
Bye.